If you want to know how to negotiate the lowest car lease payment this year, you're in luck. Because in today's video, I'm going to show you how to exactly do this step by step. In fact, all of the things mentioned in this video are things that I've done before. Recently, I was able to get an $80,000 SUV for $645 a month out the door. If you stick around until the end, I'll even give you some more nuggets on how you can get the best deal. So the first thing that you want to do is to figure out what kind of car that you want. This may seem like common sense, but when it comes to leasing, you need to shop the deal and not the car. If you want the absolute best price on a lease, you need to find the best deal, and the best deal may not be the exact car that you want. For instance, if you're looking for something more economical like a Honda or a Toyota, then I also suggest considering a Kia, a Hyundai, or a Nissan. Maybe you're in the mood for something more luxurious, like a Mercedes, a BMW, or an Audi. At any given time, one of these brands may offer a deal better than the other. Now, you have to keep in mind that not all cars lease well, so you have to be open to cross-shopping. If you want a sedan, then be open to different brands, and same goes for SUVs. At this stage, you also want to figure out how much you plan to drive. Most leases range between 7,500 to 12,000 miles a year for 2 to 3 years. If you drive more than 15,000 miles a year, then it may make sense to buy rather than lease, unless you are planning to use it for business. Paying higher mileage upfront is cheaper than paying excess mileage fees later on. Dealerships might give you a break if you lease another vehicle through them, but to avoid extra costs, it is best to give yourself some wiggle room so you don't exceed the mileage limit. Also, in this stage, you need to decide how much you can afford to pay monthly. Leasing is like renting a vehicle for an extended period, so if you can afford a $100 monthly payment, then that's what you have to work with. If you can afford more, that's fine, but you have to keep your top number in mind and consider insurance costs. Insurance for new vehicles is always going to be more expensive than a vehicle that's 3, 5, or 10 years old, so you have to keep that in mind. With all the brainstorming done, let's get into the fun part and move on to the next step, which is figuring out what deals are out there right now. I personally think the best resource out there to find what deals are being made right now is going to be the Lease Hacker Forum. This is a website that's focused on car leasing. There are regular people like you and me on there, and also dealerships and brokers that post their deals. What I suggest you start off doing is checking out what deals are available right now in their marketplace. Lease brokers have already negotiated these deals, and there's a reason on why they are available. Dealerships are looking to move their inventory, and these are the cars with the large discounts, rebates, or other incentives that allow them to reduce the sales price. So that's where I would start off first. You actually can stop here and take one of the pre-negotiated deals and avoid the headache of negotiating, but you would have to pay a broker fee, which is usually around $500 to $600. Now, I get that not everybody wants to pay this fee and wants to save that money, so if that's you, then continue watching. The second place that I would look for is the sign portion of the website. I consider filtering the results so you can get more accurate information. For instance, if you live in California, then filter out the deals that were done there. Also, if you're looking for a specific make, you can also do it here too. But I recommend leaving all makes so you can see the trend of what brands are getting signed the most. This way, you can narrow down your search a little bit more. It's possible to do a lot of research and find deals that you can't replicate in your geographic location. Often, certain deals are better for people in specific areas like Southern California or New Jersey, because these deals are very relative to the area. The more recent the deal, then the better chance of you getting something similar. If a deal was made 6 months ago, even 2 months ago, it might not be possible to replicate it. Recency is extremely important if you're looking to replicate a lease. When you look over a signed lease deal, people usually lay out their data points. They will usually show the MSRP of the vehicle, the terms, what were the monthly payment with or without tax, whether or not they placed a security deposit, what they paid at signing, and if there were any other incentives. This will give you a better picture of whether or not you can replicate a deal and if it applies to you. Some incentives include military, recent college graduate, and even Costco membership, just to name a few. Now, once you figure out what cars to target, now we need to start looking at the residual value. So the residual value will be the value of the car after a certain number of miles and years based on the MSRP. So let me give you a quick example. If a car has an MSRP of $50,000 and after 3 years and 36,000 miles, it's worth $35,000, this car would have a residual value of 70%. Residual value is one of those things that you can't negotiate. This number is set by the financial company handling the lease. Every single car based on the terms and MSRP will have its own residual value. Residual value also varies depending on your zip code. In a little bit, I'll show you exactly how to find this, since most dealerships likely won't give this information to you. The next step is to figure out what's the current money factor. The money factor, simply put, is just the rental charge or the interest rate that's going to be charged to you to lease the vehicle. So if the money factor is 0.002%, you would multiply this number by 2,400, then you would get the interest rate of 4.8%. Now, generally the money factor is not negotiable, but it is important to know this number because sometimes dealership may mark up the money factor to make more money off of you. So that's why it's important to know this number ahead of time. So when you come into the dealership and you notice that the numbers are a little bit off based on your calculation, then you probably know something is probably marked up or inflated. So let's go over how to find the residual and the money factor for any car that you want. The easiest and simplest way is by going through the admin form. So here's exactly what you should Google. Start off with the year and make and model, then add residual value. You should get a lot of search results, but the most important one is going to be Edmunds. Once you click on that link, just go to the very bottom and click on the last page, which will show you the most recent posts. There are moderators in these forums that provide reliable information about numbers, so you can use this in your negotiation strategy. Here's what I suggest asking in your post. Hi, can you please provide the residual value, money factor, and incentives for this model and trim for these terms in this zip code? This should give the moderators enough information to give you up-to-date numbers. Now, once you have your numbers, let's plug them into the calculator. I personally like to use the Lease Hacker calculator, but there are plenty of others out there. So for this example, I'll use Lease Hacker since it provides enough information to get you started. Let's just say the MSRP of the vehicle is $50,000. We plug in our lease terms, which are 24 months for 12,000 miles a year. The residual value is $31,000. We also plug in the money factor. Now let's add all the tax incentives, which in this case is $14,000 lease cash. Check zero drive-off fees. I'll explain this a little bit later. Let's plug in some other fees that you know. It's okay if you don't know everything, but the acquisition fee is usually standard, which is $650 for this specific vehicle. Next, you just want to plug in the tax rate. So this is going to depend on your location. Where I live is going to be 7.75%. Lastly, there is a disposition fee, which is typically a turn-in fee. This calculator should automatically include all these fees for you. Based on what we know right now, if you do not negotiate the selling price and just buy it as sticker, we will have a monthly payment of $536 with tax. However, based on our research, we know that we can get a much better deal since people have been signing deals for much less, and brokers are offering much less. A general rule of thumb is that you want to negotiate at least 5 to 10% off of MSRP. Now, currently in today's climate, it still can be tough, but you can generally get a pretty great discount, especially if you're in the market for an EV. Because you've done your research, you probably have a good idea of what these cars are selling for. Let's just say that you're able to negotiate the selling price down to $46,000, which is 8% off of MSRP. Now, this gives us a monthly payment of $336, including tax. This is an extremely good deal. It is hard to find a $50,000 car with a monthly payment in the low 300s. I was actually able to get a similar deal on a Ioniq 5 for $320 a month with tax through a broker. Now, a quick way to see if a lease is a good deal is if it passes the 1% test, meaning that if your monthly payment is 1% of the MSRP, you generally have an extremely good deal on your hands. So after running your numbers, you should have a pretty general idea of what the selling price that you should target and when your monthly payment should be around. Because when you negotiate a lease, you negotiate the price the same way that you would a purchase. After you negotiate the price, the selling price then should be reduced by any incentives that are authorized by the manufacturer or any rebates that you are eligible for. So don't let the dealers steal those incentives. I personally like to find deals that have already been done before and see if a dealership can get me a better or similar deal. Now, just because someone posted a signed deal does not mean that this is the absolute best price. There are times where you can just save more money, but it's just gonna take a little bit more skill. What I recommend is to find a signed deal in your local area and use it as your benchmark. Often when you negotiate with dealers, they will question how you came to that number. This can either be deals that are currently being offered or deals that someone has done before. Now, when it comes to running your numbers, I do not recommend putting any money down. So for me, I personally like to have all the fees such as acquisition, registration, and documentation fees just rolled into the lease. It's really up to you whether or not you want to pay these fees out of pocket before you sign, but let me break this down a little bit further. One of the key reasons is that it makes it more difficult to figure out whether a deal is good or not. When you put money down, you're just prepaying the lease ahead of schedule. Plus, if you total your vehicle, any money that you put down is basically gone forever. So your main focus is to try to get the sales price of a car as low as possible to the residual value. Now, when it comes to due at signing fees, such as acquisition, documentation, and license and registration fees, these are unavoidable. Now, it is up to you whether or not you want to roll them into the lease. So for me, I prefer to roll them in the lease because I like to have as little out of pocket initially, but just keep in mind that if you roll these fees into the lease, which can cost upwards of $1,000 or more, you are essentially financing this amount. So you might end up paying more than you have to. But again, anytime I search for deals or do my research, I recommend having everything roll into a lease with no money down besides the first month's payment, which is usually required to leave with the car. So once you have all the information that you need to start negotiating, I highly recommend starting off negotiating through email. I prefer email because you can say what you want, then copy and paste that information to multiple dealerships around your area. Now, when you call, it just takes more time on your end because of the conversation conditions, waiting on hold, and all of that time adds up. So here's the exact email script that I use. Now pause it if you want to copy it. Hi there, I'm in the market for this model and trim, or you can just place the car ID, and I'm looking for a lease with the terms. You could just say 12,000 miles for 36 months. I'm willing to sign the paperwork today if I could find a seller with the best price. Now what happens next is that they can give you an estimate or ask you for your phone number so they can give you a call and go over the specifics. I prefer sticking with emails unless you're comfortable negotiating over the phone. Now once you start contacting car dealerships, they're gonna ask you to come in, which is something that you don't want to do right away. I would wait until you get a response from all of the dealerships for the car that you are looking for. If anyone is looking to get close to your numbers but needs you to come in to give you the final details, then that's the one I would target. Going to a dealership can waste a lot of time and cause a lot of stress. Trust me, anyone who has ever bought a car from a dealership knows what I'm talking about. When I recently got my Mercedes-Benz EQE, I messaged and called multiple Mercedes-Benz dealership in the SoCal region, but only one was willing to entertain my offer. However, they would not give me the final numbers unless I came in. Now, I totally get this because dealerships want to focus on customers that are already in the dealership. Consumers have become smarter when car shopping, and dealerships, they know this. They don't want to give you the lowest number, then have that number beaten by someone else, especially by another dealership that's in the area. So after I talked to the car salesman, she told me that she was open to negotiating, and the numbers are not too far off. But to get the exact numbers, I would have to come in. Now, before you come in, stick to your numbers. It can be very difficult to sit there and tell someone no in their face, especially when it keeps saying that it's their best offer. I literally had to say no at least 5 times before I got the price I wanted. As long as you've done your research and know what numbers are out there, stick to your gut and be confident. You may have to explain how you got the number for them to comply, but that's okay because you already done your research. There's always gonna be a dealership out there that will match a similar deal or come very, very close. The first offer by the car salesman is usually pretty terrible. I was actually offended when I went into the dealership. I told the car salesman ahead of time that if she can get me the number I wanted, I will come in today and sign. Now when I sat down, she gave me the numbers. She was far off. Then the sales manager, he gave me his best number, which was still far off. I was actually pretty annoyed at this point because I thought it was a switch and bait. I still said no and proceeded to walk out. Now as a pro tip, don't be afraid to walk out from any deal. So because I Ubered there, my plan was to take the car home. As I was waiting for my ride, the car salesman offered me another deal, which wasn't too far off from my original offer. Now she made me feel a little bit crazy for turning down a deal over $10 a month, but I still said no because $10 over 36 months is still $360. The thing is that I knew exactly what they were trying to do and what kind of offers that were possible. So I still kindly said no. She continued to say that the deal would not be available anymore. I told her that if anything changes, just let me know. Literally 2 minutes later, the sales manager came out and he told me, seriously, are you gonna turn down this offer for $10 a month? So me with a dead serious face, I said, yeah. He finally said like, all right, fine, let's just do the deal. So the moral of the story is to stick to your gut and stick to your number because you've done the research and you know what leases are being signed right now and what brokers are offering. Just by knowing this information alone gives you a step ahead of 99% of people out there. Now, the dealership could have said no and could have wasted a couple hours of my time, but over a few bucks here and there, I know that dealership was not going to turn down a strong lead that easily, especially when they already ran my credit and I was physically there. Now, once you sign the lease deal, it's not over yet because you still have to talk to the financial manager. Now, this is like the final boss when it comes to buying or leasing a vehicle because they're going to try to upsell you on different types of warranties and protection. Just stick to your gut and say no. Now, here are a few other ways that you can actually make your lease even more cost efficient. So the first one I'm gonna go over will be multiple security deposits, which is also known as MSDs. This is where you place down anywhere between $3,000 to $7,000 as a security deposit, but this money gets refunded once your lease ends. Now, how this is different from a down payment is that the down payment goes towards the lease. On the other hand, multiple security deposits reduces the money factor or the interest rate on your lease. Now, there are only a few financial companies that allow you to do this. You typically see this more with luxury brands such as Mercedes or BMW. Another way that you can actually make your lease cheaper is by considering a one-pay lease. This is where you're paying all of your lease payments all up front. This usually includes all of the rebates, dealership discounts, and taxes and fees if there are any. Now, by going this route, you're definitely gonna be saving a lot more money on interest. So this could be a savings of a few $100s. But with these type of deals, in case you do get into a car accident and it is totaled, you're gonna be out of this money. I normally would not recommend one-pay leases unless you could really justify the cost and the driving conditions of your area. Now, here are my final thoughts if you want to negotiate your own lease deal. So be patient and don't fall for FOMO or the fear of missing out. A lot of car dealerships and salesmen are going to try to make you move on deals urgently so they can close that deal. Just remember that there's always going to be a deal out there. Now, if this process sounds a little bit too intense for you, I honestly recommend anyone who wants to lease a vehicle just go through a broker. Yes, a broker is going to charge you around $500, but honestly, it's probably going to be the best $500 that you spend when it comes to leasing a new vehicle. So just factor that into your costs. Anytime I went through a lease broker, I either just signed the documents via DocuSign or just went to the dealership and finished up the paperwork and get the keys in less than 15 to 20 minutes. No negotiating back and forth, playing this game of cat and mouse. You don't even have to talk to the financial manager. You just sign, make your first month's payment, and just leave. It doesn't get any simpler than that. So figure out how much your time is worth and whether or not going through a broker is worth it for you. If it costs you $500 over the cost of the lease, say 3 years, it comes out to be $14 a month. A lot of these deals have already been approved by the sales manager, but you still have to do your due diligence on the broker to make sure that the deal is still good. So just figure out whether or not it is worth it for you, no matter which route that you take. If you still have questions about leasing, let me know in the comments, and I try to get to as many comments as I possibly can. If you want to hang out with me some more and learn more about car leasing, check out these videos over here.